8.7 FM. Welcome to News Around the World.
Good evening. Welcome to News Around the World on Akojopo 88.7 FM Ibadan, the most listened to radio station. I am Wuraola Yusuf. The headlines: Army renovates 81 Battalion Headquarters, Commander's Residence in Oyo. APM unveils Engineer Muftau Open Salawu as Deputy Governorship candidate for Oyo 2027. EU, UK announced a summit to discuss reset and post-Brexit relations. Israel launches fresh airstrikes in Lebanon. Real Madrid confirmed Bernardo Silva signing after his Man City exits. And now the details. The Nigerian Army has renovated and commissioned the headquarters of the 81 Battalion and the official residence of its commanding officer at Letimo Cantonment, Mokola Barracks in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, as part of effort to improve troops warfare and enhance operational efficiency. Speaking during the commissioning today, the General Officer commanding 2 Division Nigerian Army, Major General Chinedu Inebefe, said the project reflected the Army's commitment to providing a conducive working and living environment for personnel. Inebefe said the initiative was in line with the command philosophy of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Lufemi Oluyede, particularly the soldiers' first policy aimed at prioritizing the welfare of troops and their families, and noted that quality infrastructure remained essential to boosting morale, productivity, and combat readiness among military personnel. Tribal marks have remained one of the most recognizable symbols of cultural identity in many African societies for centuries. Long before the advent of modern identification systems, communities, especially in Yoruba land, relied on these unique facial and body markings to distinguish families, clans, and ethnic groups. However, with the influence of colonialism, Western education, and changing social values, the practice gradually declined. Today, while tribal marking is no longer common, its history continues to offer valuable insight into Africa's rich cultural past. Akojopo FM News correspondent Abiodun Oloyede takes a closer look at the origin, significance, and lasting legacy of tribal marks in society.
Tribal marks are among the oldest forms of cultural identification in Africa. They have been used for centuries by different ethnic groups as a way of distinguishing families, clans, communities, and kingdoms. In Nigeria, tribal marks became particularly prominent among ethnic groups such as the Yoruba, Hausa, Fulani, Nupe, and several others. Long before the introduction of modern identification systems, these marks served as a reliable means of recognizing individuals and establishing their origins. One of the most important reasons for tribal marks was identification during times of conflicts and migration. In ancient times, wars between communities were common and many people were displaced from their homes. Tribal marks helped separated family members identify one another and reunite after conflicts. Among the Yoruba people of southwestern Nigeria, tribal marks became deeply rooted in culture and tradition. Different towns and families had distinct markings. For example, the Oyo, Ijebu, Egba, and Ekiti people often used different patterns to distinguish themselves. Some marks consisted of vertical lines, while others featured horizontal cuts or combinations of both. These markings were usually made on the cheeks, forehead, or chin during childhood and remained with the individual for life. During the transatlantic slave trade, Tribal marks also became a means through which enslaved Africans could be traced back to their ethnic origins, even after being taken far from their homeland. Apart from identification, tribal marks were often linked to social status and family heritage. Additionally, tribal marks played a role in concepts of beauty and attractiveness. In many communities, facial marks were regarded as signs of elegance, maturity, and cultural pride. Men and women with well-defined tribal marks were often admired and respected. However, the arrival of colonial rule and Western education in Africa brought significant changes to traditional practices, including tribal marking. Missionaries, colonial administrators, and medical practitioners discouraged the practice, arguing that it posed health risks and conflicted with modern values. Today, tribal marks remain a significant part of Africa's cultural heritage. They tell stories of migration, family background, survival, tradition, and community life. Although the practice has largely faded in modern society, its legacy continues through its history. Tribal marks stand as a lasting reminder of how African communities preserved their identities long before the modern era. That is the big story for today. Keep your fingers crossed for the next edition. Abiodun Oloyede, Agidigbo FM News.
The Allied People's Movement (APM) has unveiled Engineer Muftau Opunsalao as its deputy governorship candidate for the 2027 governorship election in Oyo State. The unveiling ceremony, which took place in the presence of state executives of the Grand Alliance between the People's Democratic Party (PDP) and the Allied People's Movement, attracted party leaders, aspirants, and supporters from across the state. Agidigbo FM News correspondent Oluwapemi Bamidele was at the unveiling ceremony held at the People's Democratic Party State Secretariat, Ukiado, Ibadan. Here is the report.
Selected party leaders from the 33 local government areas of Oyo State converged on the People's Democratic Party Secretariat, Ukiado, Ibadan, for the official presentation of the deputy governorship candidate. The governorship candidate of the Allied People's Movement, Honorable Bimbo Adekombi, alongside party leaders and members, unanimously endorsed and presented the Ogbomoso-born engineer Muftau Opunsalao, as the party's deputy governorship candidate. Speaking at the event, the governorship candidate of the Allied People's Movement, Honorable Bimbo Adekombi, pledged to sustain and expand the developmental strides of Governor Seyi Makinde. Honorable Bimbo Adekombi noted that having moved from accelerated development to sustainable development, the next phase must focus on protecting and strengthening the gains already recorded for future generations.
Accelerated development, 2.0, sustainable development. Now we are going to continuous development.
The APM governorship candidate described Engineer Salao as a highly accomplished engineer and project management expert who has played a key role in monitoring government projects across the state.
Who have done it in the private and public sector, take over the reins of Oyo State from Engineer Seyi Makinde. So Adekombi Bimbo and Engineer Muftau Opunsalao is a team that is ready for governance from day one.
According to him, the deputy governorship candidate's experience in ensuring quality control and adherence to standards on major projects has equipped him with capacity and competence required to serve the state effectively. In his acceptance speech, the deputy governorship candidate, Engineer Muftau Opunsalao, called on members to remain united and committed to ensuring victory in the forthcoming elections.
What is important in politics is winning. We must win the next election.
Earlier in their separate remarks, the chairman of the Allied People's Movement, Otun Bafagbemi Adegbinro, and the Oyo State chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Honorable Dayo Ogungbenro, and the chairman of the Oyo State Elders Forum, Chief Saka Balogun, called for cooperation, unity, and togetherness as the alliance prepares for the next election cycle under what is described as continuous development agenda. With the unveiling of Engineer Muftau Opunsalao, The Allied People's Movement says its focus is not only on winning the next election, but also on convincing voters that continuity of development remains the best path forward for your state. As the race to Agodi government has gradually gathers momentum, attention will now shift to how political parties translate their promises of unity and continuity into a message capable of winning confidence of voters in 2027. Oluwapemi Bamidele, Agidegbo FM News.
Now it is time to link up with our United Kingdom studio for the foreign news.
News from Plenamza Studio at Gidigbo FM. United Kingdom, I am Olushola Damilola, was treating as indicated he could pull the trigger on a leadership challenge as early as next week. The former health secretary publicly criticized the prime minister yesterday as he insisted he has the support of the 80 MPs needed to officially launch contest next week if Sir Keir Starmer has not yet set out a timetable for his departure. Mr. Stritton expressed his hope that Prime Minister will use the weekend to reflect and choose to depart on his own terms following the votes. Amid this internal labour strife, the Prime Minister declared his intention to defy critics, promising to carry on with what he's elected to do and bring back the change that people desperately need as a battle for his political survival. The European Union and the United Kingdom will hold their second bilateral summit on 22nd of July in Brussels. British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and European Council President Antonio Costa made the announcement in simultaneous social media posts after meeting on the sideline of the G7 summit. The leaders underlined the importance of close cooperation between the UK and Europe to benefit both sides. A Downing Street spokesperson said a closer relationship is vital for European security, resilience, and prosperity. And that ends the news from Plenamza Studio at Gidigbo FM. United Kingdom, I am Olushola Damilola.
Welcome back. We shall also be moving to our Maryland studio, United States, for more foreign news.
News from Kule Amzat Studio, Agidigbo FM, United States. I am Oluwatosin Sonya. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that a ceasefire agreement reached this week with Iran was not yet final and indicated that the United States could resume military strikes if he became dissatisfied with the arrangement. Speaking at a G7 summit in France, Trump described the agreement as a memorandum of understanding and suggested that military action could resume if the terms proved unacceptable. On the same day, leaders of the G7 summit called for a ceasefire in Lebanon and said they would work to diversify energy supply routes to reduce dependency on the Strait of Hormuz in response to the conflict involving Iran. They also welcomed the interim agreement aimed at ending the war. The leaders gathered in French town of Evian-les-Bains, located on the shores of Lake Geneva, near where the memorandum is scheduled to be signed during a ceremony across the Swiss border on Friday. The U.S.-Iran agreement is expected to initiate negotiations towards a permanent settlement to end the conflict, which has resulted in more than 7,000 deaths, primarily in Iran and Lebanon. South Africa's biggest labor unions on Wednesday urged workers not to participate in anti-immigrant protests taking place across the country, warning that employees who skip work to attend could face consequences. South Africa is on edge ahead of a June 30 deadline set by anti-immigrant groups demanding that all undocumented foreigners leave the country. Protests and possible civil unrest are expected following weeks of sometimes violent xenophobic attacks. Four major unions, including the Congress of South African Trade Unions, which represent around 2 million people, said in a statement that workers would not be protected if they fail to report for work on June 30. The labor groups also echoed President Cyril Ramaphosa's call on Tuesday not to blame migrants for South Africa's challenges. And that ends the news from Kule Amzat Studio, Agidigbo FM, United States. I am Oluwatosin Sonya.
And now the exciting world of sports. Real Madrid have made Bernardo Silva their second signing of the summer after confirming the arrival of the ex-Manchester City midfielder on a free transfer. Silva, 31, has spent a 2-year contract with Madrid until 2028 after running down his deal with City, where he spent 9 seasons. The capture of Silva is a coup for Madrid, given he was also drawing interest from domestic rivals Barcelona and Atletico Madrid. However, the appointment of fellow Portuguese Mourinho as coach helped to swing the pendulum in Madrid's favor to get the signature of Bernardo Silva. Silva came through the youth ranks at Benfica before joining Monaco in 2014, initially on loan, and then signing for Manchester City for around 58 million in 2017. Meanwhile, Silva has also capped 109 times by Portugal, winning the Nations League in 2019 and 2025, and is currently at the World Cup with Roberto Martinez's side. Is set to get their campaign underway later on Wednesday against DR Congo in Group K. To wrap up the news this evening, here is a recap of the headlines. Army renovates 81 Battalion headquarters, commander's residence in Oyo. APM unveils Engineer Muftau Opunsalau as deputy governorship candidate for Oyo 2027. EU-UK announced summit to discuss reset and post-Brexit relations. Israel launches fresh airstrikes in Lebanon. Real Madrid confirmed Bernardo Silva signing after his Man City exit.
Don't forget that you can listen to us live on our website www.agidigbo88.7fm.com. You can also download our mobile app on Google Play Store and iOS. Simply search for Agidigbo 88.7 FM. Follow us on Facebook at Agidigbo 88.7 FM, on Twitter and Instagram at Agidigbo 887 FM, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have news stories and tips for us, contact our newsroom on 070-8714-4865 or send us a mail on newsroom@agidigbo887fm.com.
And before we go this evening, here is a quick tip. The best way to predict your future is to create it. Finally, we have come to the end of the news around the world on Agidigbo 88.7 FM Ibadan, the most listened to radio station. I am Wuraola Yusuf. Thank you for listening. Good evening.
News is information, and information is power. At Agidigbo 88.7 FM, we bring the news from top to bottom.
The Oyo State Independent Electoral Commission, OISEC, has called for continuous collaboration.
We bring you reports from Oyo State.
The Oyo State House of Assembly has called for thorough investigation.
Southwest Nigeria and the rest of the world.
Has clarified that the body did not receive any cash support from international development.
Trust us to keep you informed every hour, every day.
Agidigbo 88.7 FM, the people's voice.